Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Welcome to another episode. Today we're taking a closer look at how different offensive positions fared this year and which areas we think the Lions might need to improve the most. I'm joined by Coach Jerry Angers, Michigan High School Coach of the Year in 2016. He was also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions in 2019. He's mentored 70 players to the college level and 2 all the way to the NFL. Good to have you here, Coach.
Oh, great to be here, Matt.
All right, so we did a little overview last episode about the whole season, and now we're going to look a little bit closer just at the offense and kind of break it down by position. I guess let's start with just the offensive line play. That was an anticipated strength coming into this season. How do you think they did? Did they live up to it? And then what were your thoughts on some of the offensive spots?
I think there's no doubt about the offensive line. It's one of the best in the NFL. As those guys get older, too, they're going to get better. I mean, you look at Goff, how many times was he touched in the last, 8, 9, 10 weeks, or, pressure on him or sacks given against him. And, in our run game, we suffered a few times in our run game, but that also came with, I think, the one game we had 2 guards out. And so, your injury, again, I think, the biggest thing with that is we want to try to get some depth. Hopefully they'll find some depth and fit some good guys in there. But I think it held up to exactly what everybody said it was going to be. Good.
I'm going to even go a step further and say I think it could be better than what we saw this year because, as we know, Frank Ragnow played through injury all season, and at one point I think the Lions were down to their 3rd or 4th string right guard.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing you look at, and it's one of those things when you see like a Ragnow guy that's playing on an injured foot. I mean, again, I heard the thing at the beginning of training camp that no matter what happens during camp, you're 100% on the first day of camp, and then after that you're not. So
right.
I mean, that's the thing. But hey, look at Skipper. I mean, that was he steps in and he starts and he hasn't played and he's been in camps for 5 to 6 years and not on a roster spot, and he stuck around for the full year for us and did a great job. So I think that, again, a little more depth, stay healthy, and of course as they get educated throughout the offseason, it'll be that much better.
Right. Well, and I think that's a perfect example of, your teammates around you making you better too, because, Ragnow and Sewell are like, okay, we got you, Dan. And, you think about it, right? The 2 of them were like, all right, we're going to make this work. I think that game started with 2 penalties on him right away.
Right.
And then after that, he was smooth. Mm-hmm. And so that's a great testament to the culture they're building there.
Yeah.
And we talk about the left tackle, Taylor Decker. I mean, I actually owe him a little bit of thanks for the name of this podcast because it was after that Buffalo game, and he's like, we're not the same old Lions.
That's
and
great.
Added another word or 2 in there.
Sure.
But yeah, they're not the same old Lions. Taylor Decker and the team showed that. They went back the following week, took care of Jacksonville quite handily. The one person we sometimes don't talk about enough of is probably Jonah Jackson. I mean, the left guard there has been solid. So yeah, the right guard area is probably the area of most concern because Vaitai was on injured reserve, right. And then Evan Brown even went down, and so like you talked about earlier, maybe some more depth there.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think that's the biggest thing, and you got you want to. That's one of the toughest positions there is. They're in the trenches every time, and they're fighting every day, and they're. I mean, they have to stay healthy, and how do they stay healthy when they're doing what they're doing to their bodies? And so I think that's the biggest thing. The more depth we can get, the more people that can fill in certain spots, and you can see it. You're gonna injury the team that has most success in the Super Bowls and in the playoffs is the one that stays injured free or has a good enough backup to replace what they just lost.
For sure, and we talked about the running game doing well, then kind of lulling, and then coming back a bit. So there were ups and downs with that, but one thing we definitely have no ups and downs about is what you already said. Quarterback Jared Goff had time to throw the ball, and that made a huge difference.
For sure.
Let's go over to the running backs then. They started off the season on fire, right? Enfuego, you had Swift and Williams, and then you even had St. Brown on an end around. But the running game was great. Swift got hurt. He was out for a while. Jamal Williams, I guess, for me, Jamal Williams was, I want to say he's the biggest surprise, even though we shouldn't say he's a surprise, but he had his career season this year, and he really stepped up.
I totally agree. I mean, first of all, you break Barry Sanders' record. That tells you something. You rush for 1,000 yards. That tells you something. Again, we had an extra game, but we don't care about that. How hard he ran, and I think that goes into what we talked about yesterday was, as hard as he played, of course, he wanted to prove any critics wrong, and he wants to be part of this team. He wants to be part of the Lions. He wants to make sure that he's part of the growth and the development and getting into the playoffs and making runs to the Super Bowl. And he's just, I think he's a great leader. We see it, during the game, after the game. I'm telling you, his post game after the Green Bay game was unbelievable. You're going from tears to a MMA fighter, and right,
seamless transition. He went from one to the other, and it was like he didn't even miss a beat.
No, and it's that, and you look at it and go, man, I wish he was. That's a teammate I want.
For sure, and that's the thing. Not only what he did on the field, but what he's done off the field with the Lions, adding to the culture there. I guess for me, he's a free agent. Swift is in the final year of his contract. I hope they can bring Jamal Williams back. I also, though, feel they need to do something to invest in that position a little bit, just in case Swift does get hurt again. You want to add another talented spot to this. So one of my hopes for that position is, as well as it did do, I would like to add somebody else with some talent, whether it's through the draft or through free agency. That's something we'll look at in the coming weeks.
For sure.
Let's look at the tight ends and the wide receivers, because this was an up and down group. And I say up and down because, we had additions and minuses throughout the year. Started off really well, but during that 1-6 stretch, a lot of people maybe outside Detroit, they say, they started off so bad, then they suddenly got hot. Well, they didn't get hot, they got healthy. Right? I mean, there were games where Shark and St. Brown were not in the game, and Reynolds was playing banged up. I believe the Minnesota game, St. Brown was playing with like a sore hip or something. So the injuries really played an impact early on. DJ Shark did not have the season people thought he would have, but I think he finished the season the way people thought he was going to be. So there's a lot of promise there. St. Brown, I don't think that guy missed a beat from last year.
Right. Yeah, for sure it was St. Brown. I mean, and I agree with the Shark. St. Brown is one of those guys, again, when you know the guys that were drafted before you, and you know the rounds and the schools, you know that guy wants to be a player. And look at his dad. His dad was a bodybuilder, I believe. So
yeah, Mr. Universe, I think. Mr.
Universe. So, and Shark, and I think that's you hit it on the nail on the head when you talk about the injuries with those guys. You talk about, we had some good guys that stepped up. Kennedy stepped up.
Tom Kennedy was huge
in games. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Williams is definitely going to help us next year. I mean, again, he was an injured guy. We drafted him injured, knew that he wasn't going to, probably not going to be available for us this year. And if he did, he was going to make some splash plays.
Right.
He made some splash plays.
He did.
And so I think that's the thing you got to look at. Is that room needed to be upgraded? Yeah, I think so. Take some of the pressure off those guys and let the young guy develop, and we'll see what happens with it. So
yeah, we didn't mention Josh Reynolds or Khalif Raymond yet, and both of those guys were solid contributors. I mean, Raymond had probably one of his best seasons, if not the best of his career, and I think Josh Reynolds is kind of an unsung hero of the team. The guy has some great chemistry with Goff, and it seems like wherever he goes, as soon as he gets there, the wide receiver room suddenly gets upgraded quite quickly. Same thing happened in Tennessee last year. The question is, will DJ Shark come back? I think that's the big thing, because if you're going into next season with St. Brown, Reynolds, Raymond, and Jamison Williams, and you have Shark in there, you got to feel really good about that receiving room.
Sure. Yeah, it won't be a crowded room, but it'll be a talented room.
That it will be. And so we'll see what happens with Shark. I think that's the biggest one that a lot of people are wondering about. And then the other part of the receiving game is the tight end. And, the biggest news, of course, was the T.J. Hockenson trade, and that left the Lions with Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, and James Mitchell. Mitchell being the rookie who also was coming off an injury in college, so we didn't even get to see him, a full year rehabilitated yet. What were your thoughts on the tight end group?
Well, I mean, we set the record, for the most catches by tight ends this year, I think, for the Detroit Lions.
That's impressive, and we've had some good tight ends in our history.
I think it was like 12.
David Sloan,
Yeah, so I think that's impressive. I think you had three guys that fit in and did what they needed to do with Hockenson gone. I think you look at the trade that we had when Hockenson was traded, and then all of a sudden we started, things started picking up. I mean, that's why I never, again, I don't doubt coaches. Shouldn't doubt coaches. Shouldn't doubt player personnel. Shouldn't doubt GMs. Shouldn't doubt owners. And when you look at the stuff that Holmes and them are doing, you got to agree with everything they do. Even if you don't agree to disagree, because, man, they make some great decisions. And I think that was a huge decision they made, and knew that those three tight ends were going to be able to fit the bill and do the job that needed to be done.
Yeah, I agree completely. I was a little bit My initial reaction was, man, really? Are we getting rid of TJ? Like, because the talent the guy has. But then you take some time, you flesh it out, you think about it a little bit. Actually, one observation I'd heard, and then I thought about it, that Seattle game when Hockenson had that amazing game, St. Brown wasn't on the field.
Right.
And so he and St. Brown run a lot of similar stuff that when both of them are on there together, it's usually one or the other. And those other tight ends definitely stepped up. Some people are saying the Lions need to draft a tight end early, and I'm not so sure about that. I might be in the small camp here, but I kind of want to see what these three guys can do again without bringing anybody else in. But again, if there's someone they see in the draft or free agency, they're like, hey, we'd like to add to it, I'm all for it. But I'm comfortable going into next season with these three guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as long as we can run and they can block and make, they have 9 touchdowns between them?
Yeah.
I mean, we had 3 in one game by one of them. So, those are things. What is the tight end used for? Not everybody has a Kelsey, or a Kittle. And,
right.
Is our offense designed for a Kelsey or a Kittle? Well, not necessarily. We were in the top 5 this year. So
you're absolutely right. And it's not just the passing part of the tight end game. It's the blocking part, and I think the Lions found some great blocking with these guys.
Yes, for sure. And I think that, that's what we talk about is, are they going to use the 2 tight end sets, 22 personnel, 21 personnel, to 12 personnel? What are they going to do? And that's the thing is you look at what Holmes and Coach Campbell and those guys are doing is they're drafting bodies that are going to do what they want them to do in the position that they need them to be in. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's a personnel thing. And I mean, we had some pretty good success with what they're doing, so how can we question them?
So that brings us to our last position on offense, and I don't want to say most controversial, but it seems to be the one that's been up for topic and debate the most, and by nature of the position, it is going to be, because the quarterback is that position that everybody focuses on first, and that is talking about the Lions quarterback position, obviously, Jared Goff being the starter. We finished the season with Nate Sudfeld as our backup. We had multiple quarterbacks, Boyle, Blau, and Dobbs, who were on the team at different points, who then went to different teams, and Blau and Dobbs actually started games for other teams this year. But what's your feeling on the Detroit quarterback situation?
Well, I think that's the biggest thing is we have to find somebody to back up Jared Goff. We have to find somebody that can come in and win some games for us if there's an extended period of time where he's injured. Cooper Rush, guys like that from Dallas. I mean, look what he did. Look at Henny last week for the Chiefs, led him on a 98-yard drive. So we have to find that guy.
For sure.
We want to talk about the rookie from the 49ers. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think I love Jared Goff. I think he's great for the team. They have him and Coach Johnson have a great relationship. And look at he's had a heck of a season.
Right. Even as I said in our last episode, the first 10 games as a Detroit Lion, I was very skeptical. Even though I think it was in game 2 or 3 against the Packers, I saw him throw a dart, a laser of a ball for a nice touchdown pass. I think it was to Hockenson. And I was like, that's a nice throw. But again, he didn't play well. He wasn't surrounded well, and the system wasn't well. Well, then we saw development of players throughout the season that stepped up. We saw the change to the offensive coordinator. And even though we didn't get the wins early in this season, I didn't see the same mistakes by Goff early in this season. And then as the season went on and we got healthier and he had the cast members around him, and it's not just him having cast members, he made some plays. I mean, I think, look at the final play against the Green Bay Packers. What did they do? He threw the ball. They said, we're giving the ball to Goff, we're throwing it, and we're going to win throwing it, when the safe play is to run it, and everybody in the building thinks we're going to run it when it's 25 degrees outside. Goff, for me, I am solid with him as a starter. I think it's a great position to be in compared to just where we were a year ago, wondering what we were going to be at. The backup position, though, I think severely needs to be addressed. I think if a team wants to have a shot at the playoffs, if they think they're a playoff contending team, they need to make sure if their starter goes down for 1, 2, 3 games, you got someone who can come in, right? The Eagles had Gardner Minshew come in. I don't know if they won a game with him, but he's a competent backup, and he actually shows flashes at times. So we need to have an upgrade there. Now, the free agency route is probably where I'd like to go with that, get someone who has some experience. But I also think the Lions need to draft a quarterback. No, I'm not saying the first round or the second round, but since 2017, actually 2017 is the last time the Lions drafted a quarterback, and that was in the 6th round. We should be drafting somebody in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round. I mean, look at Brock Purdy, right? You never know if 31 GMs didn't think the guy was the right fit or the right thing to take, it shows it's worth taking a flyer on a quarterback late in the draft. You never know when you're going to hit on something.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And when you have those extra picks, and again, what Brad Holmes and Coach Campbell have been doing with it is they're going to take the best available guy on the board. And they're not saying they're taking you to replace you. They're saying they're taking you to make us, this team better. And I think that's one of the biggest things we'll see in this draft. It's going to be fun to watch.
Awesome. Well, that's our look at the offense side of the ball, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to get alerts about new episodes. Thank you, Taylor Decker. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.